Oh boy. Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Aisha here, and today we have some very disappointing news. Um, yeah, the last two islands in Sonic Frontiers are the exact same as the first. And I know you probably don't believe me, but take a look at this. Alright? Isn't that sheer proof right there? Right? I mean, like, this has to be, like, real. This has to be official, right? And, well, you probably think, no, this can't possibly be. This is supposed to be a good Sonic game. Well, unfortunately, I have to tell you that's not necessarily the case. Turns out that this was another one of Sega's rushed development sort of games, and they essentially did the same thing they did with Sonic Colors, where they didn't have enough levels to have a substantial runtime. So what they did was they made 6 acts out of each zone instead of 3. And now with Frontiers, what seems to have happened is that they made the first island, Kronos Island, so big, and then when they made the second and third island, Ares and Chaos, and they realized they couldn't match the same scale with those islands that they did with Kronos, then it became crunch time, and then I guess they had to split the Kronos into 3 so they could. Actually, they didn't even necessarily split it in 3. I think they split it in 2. One part of Kronos became the final island, Oranos Island, and then a chunk of geometry from Kronos was directly copied and pasted for Rhea Island, which is the fourth island. And while I was kind of expecting, unfortunately, the fourth island to be rehashed, since it was called Rhea Island, and Rhea is the goddess of Gaia, I believe, or the daughter of, I think, I don't know, something to do with like Earth, because Gaia means Earth. So I kind of expected that, unfortunately, but I was really hoping for like an icy, like winter island of some sort. But man, this is some really unfortunate news. And I know I said my next video was gonna be a podcast, but I need to make sure you guys know this. If you guys are planning to get this game and you're willing to spend your money on this, then I highly recommend that you reconsider this. I'm not saying to not get the game. There are so many good things about this game. And I know I sound very negative right now, but I'm just very let down by this news. Um, so, yeah, I feel like you guys need to know this because, essentially, what's going on here is that it's only 3/5 out of the game is basically going to be enjoyable, and that by the time you get to the last two islands, it's going to feel very monotonous. I was kind of hoping for an icy winter island of some sort, and then the final island. The final island is called Oranos, which he's the god of the sky. So it wasn't totally out of the question that it was going to be some sort of like digital realm sort of thing, like Cyber Island, like world, where Sonic has to maybe go into like another realm. It wasn't totally out of the question, because if Oranos is the god of the sky, and that's sometimes referred to as the heavens, or where you go to when you die, the you know the afterlife almost. And Sonic's friends are killed. Apparently, I'm guessing maybe in Sonic Frontiers, and they become digital ghosts. Um, I'm not 100% sure if they're dead or not, but they're ghosts at this point when they get trapped by Sage. So that has to be the case. I can't see any other explanation for that. So yeah, I don't really know what to say. This is a bit of a shocker. At the same time, however, I probably should have expected this because Sega is always rushing Sonic Team's games. And I was really hoping Sega would learn this time and take the time they needed to make the game good, but no. And I know I always throw around the terms Sonic Team and Sega as if they're one thing, but no, they're actually two separate divisions. Sega is like the big boy corporation, and then Sonic Team is like a division of Sega that works solely on Sonic games. Now, Sonic Team, this is not their fault. Or not really. It's mostly Sega's fault because they didn't want to give Sonic Team enough time to make their game quality. So, it's mostly on Sega. They should have given Sonic Team the time they needed. Actually, this game was only going to have 4 years of development time originally. But then Sonic Team had to waste time arguing with Sega to get an extra year of development time. And they shouldn't have to fight Sega to do that. They should be able to... Like, I don't even care if you have to take 10 years to make a Sonic game for it to be good. I would wait my entire life. I would wait until I was 100 years old. And if I could still play video games by then, probably not. But okay, let's say I don't know, 50. Any number. Like, I would wait, as long as I don't die before the next Sonic game would come out, I would wait as long as needed if we could just get the perfect Sonic game. And in the aspect of where Sonic Team is at fault for this, it's not, it is kind of their fault. And I haven't really seen anyone talk about this, but and they have messed up in the past. It's always a mix of like Sega and Sonic Team both messing up, but I think there's also part Sonic Team, because I think they should have realized by now that Sega is not going to care if their game isn't ready, and they're just going to rush it anyway. So, personally, I think what they should have done is they should have made all the islands really small at first, make sure they're all polished and everything, make sure they have different biomes for each one, and then, once those islands are complete, then, if they have time afterward, make the islands bigger. I don't care if the islands are half the size they are now. I want diverse biomes. I don't want to be playing through the same green grassy ruins 3 times in the game. Like, what? Why does Sega do this, man? Why did they do this? It just makes no sense. And, unfortunately, I don't think this is gonna get fixed in any way, because Sega's probably not gonna let Sonic Team make a patch to change the islands. And they probably can't do that anyway, even if Sega allowed them, because, then they have to rewrite the whole story. Because, I actually interviewed not really interviewed, but I asked this one guy who commented on a video from a Sonic tuber called, I forgot, was it Premi de Remy, or was it Gamer Guide 7 Aces? I believe the conversation originally started on... Okay, yeah, I originally started a conversation with this one guy who had already played the game on a Sonic tuber's channel called Premi de Remy. He told me there was a story reason behind why the 4th and 5th island are the exact same as the first. So that means they would have to rewrite the whole story, which I don't really think is feasible at this point. That would take them like a whole other year, 2 years for them to do, and Sega probably wouldn't let them do that, because they have to move on to making the next Sonic game, and especially if they want it to be good, decent at least. So, actually, I'm gonna show you a little bit of some of the questions I asked him. So I posted a comment on Premi de Remy's channel, complaining, well, not really complaining, complaining about how lazy this was of Sega to do, to make them just reuse the first island for the 4th and 5th, just expressing my anger and my disapproval of this action. So, after I did that, this guy named RJTMTV, he replied to my comment, and I was guessing at the time he'd already played the game, because he said, not excusing anything here, but there's a story reason behind the island splitting. So then I replied, there is? And then he said, 100%. I saw all the leaks and spoilers. I don't want to ruin your experience, though. It is a shame that we aren't getting a snow or jungle biome, but there is a reason behind the islands being split. So then I said, okay, great, I'm interested to see the reason. Question, though, do you believe the reason is justified? He replied, for the story, absolutely. It makes sense. I do wish the early speculation and leaks were true, though, but that's on us for believing randomers online. And, I kind of agree with him. That's one of the bad things about being a hardcore Sonic fan. It's that you often fall into the trap of believing things that aren't true, or overhyping things, stuff like this. Anyway, so I replied, okay, I'm excited to see what the reason is. Did it feel fatiguing going through Rhea and Orenos with the Kronos Island theme? And then I followed it up with, or was it different enough for you to enjoy it? And then he replied, oh no, I haven't played it yet. So this is when I learned that he actually hadn't played the game. I've just seen about every leak and cutscene, though. So him saying that, I'm not 100% sure if this is trustworthy. I'm pretty sure it is, because he's not like a hardcore fan, yet he'd followed all the leaks, so I don't think he would try to fabricate like a lie and manipulate the wording of these leaks to do that, because he's not a hardcore fan. So I wouldn't expect him to do this. So I think this is probably true. Wouldn't be surprised if it isn't, though. Anyway, and then he said, the island being cut into 3 parts will make sense, though, I guarantee it. So then I replied with, okay, interesting, I'm intrigued. Last question, do you think Sega uses as an excuse to reuse the Kronos assets? He didn't reply, or he did, but I didn't know this at the time. So then, afterward, a few hours later, the other Sonic tuber I mentioned, Gamer Guide 7 Aces, posted a video about, sharing his complaints for, Kronos being split into 3. So then, I mentioned him in the comments, and I wanted to tell him about the interview I had with RJTMTV. I said, someone who played through the game says there's a story reason for why Kronos Island was split into 3. So then he found my comment, the guy I interviewed, and he's like, it's literally no big deal. There's a story explanation for this. Fans shouldn't have believed leakers and speculation. They worked themselves up and wound up disappointed. This is very true. And then I said, I agree. While I am a hardcore fan of myself, I always took the leaks with a grain of salt to prepare myself for this situation. Which, it's not entirely false, but it's not entirely true either. The concept does seem a bit weird, but I'm sure I'll come around on it when I play the game. Thank you for your time. The information you provided will be put to good use. So then I believe it was after this point when I realized he had replied to my comment on Premi Duremi's video. My last comment. Question. So then he said, that makes sense from the story side, but also the development standpoint as well. It is a bit of paddling, but it doesn't really matter. Kronos, Ares, and Chaos are the main parts. So then I replied, yeah, they should have stuck with 3 islands and made them really good, or make 5 islands as intended, but make them much smaller so they have enough time to actually create different biomes, which is what I said before. But oh well. Like you said, the first 3 islands are the main parts, and they're what I'm going to enjoy the most. Thank you once again for your insight into this matter. Like I said before, I will make good use of this information. So that's where it ended, and then a little while later, I was combing through some of the early trailers to see if there was any evidence of marketing of Rhea and Orenos Island possibly being shown under our noses, since it basically looks the same as, they both basically look the same as Kronos. So, and then I found something in the very first, I believe it was called the announcement trailer they showed at, I believe it was Summer Games Fest. I'm not sure. But anyway, at the very end, they showed Sonic approaching like this big giant boss. It's not Giganto, the one we've been seeing on Kronos Island, and the one we get to fight there, like the big black one. This one seems to have like a sheen of purple to him, and to me it looked big enough to be the final boss. He stomped his foot on the ground, and Sonic got like launched into the air. So it kind of gave me the feeling of like a final fight almost, and the aesthetic of the environment looked like Kronos Island. So I put this comment on Gamer Guide 7's video saying, "Hey guys, this doesn't completely come out of nowhere. I just realized something. Remember the announcement trailer we got back at the June 2021 Sonic Central? This was wrong after what I realized that it was at Summer Game Fest, I think. At the very end of the trailer, we saw that giant boss stomp its foot on the ground and Sonic got launched into the air. That could very well be the final boss of the game, which was on what we thought was Kronos Island at the time, but it might have been Oranos Island under our noses the whole time. So yeah, some pretty disappointing news. This is very disheartening. I was hoping Sega would learn this time from their mistakes, but I guess not. Let me show you the Twitter thread that I found. This is how I originally found out about the rehashed open world. So, there's this Twitter user named Return of the Mari. He got the game early, and he left this thread. He started it with, yeah, so Sonic Frontiers very clearly recycles a large chunk of content in a manner that artificially extends the runtime. So this is where we actually get physical, not physical, but visual evidence supporting the fact that the 4th and 5th island were actually rehashed from the first one, Kronos. So, he said, let's get this out of the way. Rhea Island and Oranos Island are the 4th and 5th areas of the Starfall Islands. They're the same as the first, Kronos Island. And actually, a little while back, at the most recent Sonic official live stream on their YouTube account, one of the, I think someone in the live stream was playing, I believe his name is Justin. He played like 15 minutes of Sonic Frontiers. He was trying to go on the map to select a cyberspace portal so he could show off the Sky Sanctuary level to the viewers before they close out the stream. And he accidentally hit the button that showed the list of the different islands. So then for a split second, we saw all the names of the islands. And we already known about Kronos, Ares, and Chaos, but this is when we realized that the last two were named Rhea and Oranos. And then the fan base mostly spent its time between this and when we found out about the rehashed open world, trying to think about what the last two islands could be. Anyway, so he goes on to say, and I don't just mean that they used the same grass level theme and played the exact same song from Kronos. I forgot to mention that. The last two islands also played the same song as they did in the first. I mean, they couldn't even change the music. This is really lazy. He continues, I mean that all three of them were part of one island until they were split in development. Okay, this is where we get to the juicy stuff. And he finished by saying, essentially, Sega pulled the colors again, which is what I said earlier. They were trying to artificially extend the runtime by basically copying the level layouts for the first three acts of each world in the game, and so that they each have 6 acts, and then that would make the game almost double the runtime, because I guess originally it was very short. I don't really know much about Sonic Colors development because I wasn't a Sonic fan at the time, but anyway. The file names for these icons of each of the islands are labeled in a numerical order, except for Rhea and Oranos, which are under the World 1 label. As you can see in this image here, if you look at the IMGLSW thing, you'll see that there's Kronos with IMGLSW1, Ares with IMGLSW2 for World 2, and then Chaos Island IMGLSW3 because it's World 3. And then we look at the file names for Rhea and Oranos Island, and we see that they both say IMGLSW1 like they did with Kronos. So this is clear evidence that Rhea and Oranos were actually ripped straight from Kronos. This wasn't intentional for them to make new islands with just the Kronos layout. These were actually ripped from the original Kronos Island because they were a little overly ambitious at the time and thought they could make a huge giant world and then replicate that 5 times with different level themes. So anyway, Mario continues. These mini-maps are for Chronos, Rhea, and Oranos, respectively. As you can see, Rhea is literally just a chunk of geometry from Chronos. Oranos seems to be separate and original, but could very possibly be taken from the full Chronos Island. They're also all titled World 1, like I said before when I showed you the image. So yeah, as you can see, Rhea in the top right corner is literally just a chunk of geometry from Chronos. And it's basically half the size. So that island is going to be very short. And then we can see in the bottom right, that's Oranos Island. Well, it's not a geometry directly copied from Chronos, but it is very possible that Oranos was, like Mari said, it was very possible that Oranos was originally on Chronos Island, but then it got ripped away from it for development purposes. So then he continues by he sent a screenshot. And he said, in fact, you can still see parts of Rhea with the geometry intact in Chronos, which has areas suspiciously walled off from the player. So yeah, as you can see here, there's an area on Chronos that Sonic can't access because that's actually Rhea, the Rhea part of Chronos that they later used, copied and pasted to make Rhea Island. So then Mari continues to bring the point home. This is a memo from Eggman talking about the ancients and how they never spread their influence beyond the Starfall Islands, except he refers to them as 3 Piddly Islands, not 5. Now, before I show the image, I didn't want to share this because it was a minor spoiler. I had known this already at the time, but I didn't want to share this. I want you guys to see this when I play the game, but I guess you kind of have to see it now for this to make sense. So, the image says Egg Memo 7. Who were the ancients? They predate any civilization by a wide margin. The Echidnas? Pfft. The Black Arms? Pleased. The Babylonians? Hardly. And yet they didn't seem to influence the world beyond these 3 Piddly Islands, not 5. So, yeah, this is a bit of evidence showing that there was a story reason for for Chronos Island being split, but, like I said before, had Sega not rushed this game, the story probably could have been a lot different and would have been a lot better. Not that it's gonna be bad or terrible or anything. It's gonna be much better than probably any Sonic game to date. But we could have had a much better game. Okay, next tweet says these memos are voiced as well. It's not just a typo. A vocal recording with remnants of the 3 islands plan means they had made the decision to split Chronos into 2 extras sometime in the middle of development. Like I said before, the evidence to support this does not stop here. And this is where it gets really interesting. Note Chaos Island, the 3rd area in the game. Before the change of plans, it would have actually been the final area, and it sure seems like it. It's a volcanic-themed world, a classic final level trope, exactly. And the name Chaos Island thematically fits the setting of the finale. Thank you, Mari. That's perfect. That's just right there. Like, that drives the point home. Like, he cannot refute that. Like, he has a good point there. Lava-themed worlds do often serve as, like, the final, like, area. Look at Sonic 3 Knuckles. I know that Lava Reef wasn't necessarily the final level, but it was, like, the penultimate level, Obviously, it couldn't be the final level because Sonic games usually have, like, a mechanical theme for their final levels, but it was one of the final levels, So, that's why I messed up in my original Sonic Frontiers video, because I thought that Chaos Island was going to be the final island, but then we learned that, there were going to be 2 more, islands, and then, we were specifically told that Chaos was not going to be the final island. So, and this happened. Anyway, Mario continues, notice how gameplay and marketing footage only ever shows the first 3 islands, with no signs of Rhea or Oranos. Considering how they're indistinguishable from Chronos, however, they could have been presented without any indication of being separate areas. And that's what I was saying before. All this time, they could have been showing gameplay of Rhea and Oranos, and we would not even know it. And actually, I'm not 100% sure on this, but in the Showdown trailer that the official Sonic YouTube account just released, I believe, because the color of the grass is slightly brighter here, and because of these new enemies, I do believe that they have shown parts of Rhea and Aranos. And there is this one clip of like millisecond shots of Sonic running through all the islands. Note how they show Kronos, they show Ares, and then they show Chaos. And then there's 2 more shots, or 3, I don't remember exactly. Those were probably Rhea and Aranos. So they had probably been showing this off the whole time. But they didn't make a note to mention this to us because they knew we would get mad. The next tweet says, also notice that there are only 3 rescuable characters. This would have been 1 for each island before they chopped up Kronos. With the memo, Chaos Island, and the characters, the idea of the late addition of these 2 new areas is further supported. Exactly, like, the main cast of this game is Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Eggman. Since he is involved in this game, like if you watch my previous video with the prologue reaction and stuff like that, you'll know. I was thinking, okay, maybe we have to rescue Eggman at some point. Once his experiment goes wrong, which I'm sure it will. It's pretty safe to assume that at this point. But let's say that we don't rescue Eggman. There's still only 3 rescuable characters, like Mari said, up until this point that we know of. We know that we rescue Amy on Kronos Island, we rescue Knuckles on Ares Island, and then we rescue Tails on Chaos Island. But who do we rescue on the 2 other islands? So, yeah. Very interesting. Oh boy. Okay. Next tweet. So this is kind of just like his final thoughts on the matter, because this was a long thread. Anyway. So what exactly can be gleaned from this? Number 1, Sega, not Sonic Team, has not learned a thing in regard to time and resource management. Thank you. Thank you, Mari. Thank you. He continues, this shouldn't be a shocker. This is always true, despite their insistence that next time will be different. And you know what? I have to agree with him. That is totally correct. He continues, this may not be a total rush job of a game. Like I said, 3/5 of the game are going to be very enjoyable. There are going to be 3 very different biomes we're going to get to go through. And he continues, but they still seem fine with recycling existing content to fill out corners on a short notice. Something akin to what happened with, like I said, Colors and Forces as well. Really? They did that for Forces? I'm not surprised they did that for Forces, but anyway, moving on. He continues, to me, it seems they made the original Kronos first, this is what I was saying earlier, but they couldn't match the same large scale with Ares and Chaos, exactly. So not only did they make the next area significantly smaller, but they covered their tracks and eased the pacing difference by chopping up Kronos into 3. Exactly, that's exactly what I was trying to say before. They made Kronos way too big, because they thought they could match the same scale with all the other islands, but they couldn't. And this is where Sonic Team is faulted, and then again, it is mostly Sega's fault. Sonic Team has improved, so, over the years. Anyway, Mari's second point, if they're willing to pad the game out with reused segments functioning as extra worlds, they clearly care a lot about runtime. Exactly. I mean, they even started marketing it as a selling point later on in the game's release cycle. This is why Sonic Colors is my point of comparison. Exactly. They did this, like I said before, they did the same thing they did with Sonic Colors. They copied and pasted level layouts from all the levels in the different worlds so they can extend the runtime of those worlds so they can have a longer game. Instead of having enough time to create original levels that would naturally extend the runtime. So, bad on Sega again, anyway. Most likely they focused hard on making this game because of the intense amount of criticism thrown at Forces for being short as heck. But as said before, this has surely led to things being padded out in one way or another. Exactly. Number 3, the most important in my opinion, they were definitely willing to recycle content just for the sake of lessening the load. I say most important because it ties into arguments regarding cyberspace. Many, including the developers, argue that these are merely throwbacks for the fans, glossing over the tiredness of nostalgic throwbacks in Sonic. This clearly paints the picture that they were willing to completely reuse content if it was solely for their sake. Exactly. He has a good point there. Like I said in my first Sonic Frontiers video, the cyberspace stages are probably 90 to 95% rehashed level layouts and level themes. This is something I'm going to talk about in my podcast eventually, but as far as we know right now, there are 8 cyberspace themes, like not like level layouts, but like designs. So far, we've only seen Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and the new city level. I believe that's an original design, I'm not sure. And 4 of the cyberspace themes that we haven't seen yet are taken from Sonic Forces. So, yeah, barely anything is original here. The only thing original that we have seen so far, design-wise, is the city level. Or the city, theme for the layouts, but anyway, the next tweet says, with all of this in mind, Frontiers really seems like it fell into the same trappings of other recent Sonic games on the development side. It really sucks that it's still somehow a consistent issue, even in the acclaimed evolution of Sonic. Exactly, a title alone in this game made me thought, okay, this is this game is called Sonic Frontiers. This makes us think that the game's gonna push boundaries. It's gonna push past. It's going to go into new frontiers, a new frontier, like the final frontier, like in Star Trek, So it just sucks, man. So then he finishes by saying, with this information, the question of what development was like has already opened up. One could argue this game was rushed, the developers were lazy, or they only actually planned around 1/3 of it and made the rest up as they went along. But who's to say? Personally, I think it was the first one. The game, Seiko rushed the game. I don't believe it was that the developers were lazy at all. I think they were working their tail off because they were trying to make sure that they had 5 different biomes, but then they really didn't have enough time. So again, it is still slightly their fault for not making sure they had the 5 original biomes first, and then making them bigger with whatever remaining time they had left. But anyway, so, yeah, this is, pretty disappointing. And, it's really unfortunate that Sonic Frontiers, like all the other Sonic games, has fallen short again. So, yeah. I'll still be playing the game on my channel, so don't unsubscribe, please. I still want you guys to see that gameplay. So, like I said before, this isn't a total letdown. It's a big letdown because basically 2/5 of the game are completely rehashed. But at least most of it will be enjoyable. So that's what's important. And hopefully eventually, if I can get enough money to buy Sonic Frontiers on PC, then I can use mods and get original biomes or whatever. But so I'm just gonna close out the video by saying this is a bit concerning because a while ago, I forgot who from Sonic Team said it, but they were looking for an 8 out of 10 score, and from the scores that reviewers have gotten the game early have been giving it lately, it seems to be gearing towards that 8 out of 10, 7.5, 8 out of 10 direction. But now that we found this, you find out that the last 2 islands are rehashed. I don't know. I feel like this game's going to get a lot of low scores, or lower than what was intended. So, and they said that if this formula succeeded, which it's hard to say if it will at this point, but they said if it succeeded, then they will continue with this format for the next 10 years of Sonic, which would be great if they did, because they can build upon this new formula. And honestly, open world is just the best for Sonic, because he has so much room to run around and just explore, instead of being confined to these linear levels where you just press a boost to win. So, but anyway, as I was saying, now that this this is all based on hopes here. Hopefully, I pray to God that they'll continue using this formula, but if this is unsuccessful and Sonic Team feels that they failed here, then like they have done with every other sort of style of gameplay, the adventure formula, the boost formula, they're going to completely abandon the idea of the open zone and then try something else new, and the next Sonic game is going to suck as well because, you know, it's going to be their first time experimenting with whatever new sort of style of game they try to create, and then it's going to be even longer before we get a good, like, you know, a perfect Sonic game. So I don't know, man. This is just crazy. I can't believe Sega did this. This is a huge letdown. Um, my only hope is that Sonic Team somehow manages to fix this, or makes the next game exceptional. I don't know. Um, but anyway, I know this is probably a long video. I don't even know how long this took. But if you made it to this point in the video, which you probably did because you're still watching, then thank you for watching this until the end. I know it was probably very long, but I feel like you guys need to know this, because if you guys are planning on spending $60 on this game, which is how much it costs, then you should know this before making your purchase in case you want to cancel your pre-order. But anyway, I'll see you hopefully the day before Sonic Frontiers for with my pre-release podcast. I'm not really going to mention the rehash of the 4th and 5th islands in that podcast. Probably not, because there are many other things to talk about. So I feel like this needed its own video so you guys can get the news. And of course, be sure to subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed, so you don't miss my November 8th gameplay of Sonic Frontiers. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.